everybody, this is Steven, back once more to bug you with some of my stories regarding the figures I have in my collection. Today I decided to just show you something just a little bit different from the usual discussions about the He-Man. This time I will just show you what kind of figures I got in a trade with a good friend of mine called Tom. Hi Tom, thanks for doing the trade today with me, I appreciate it. We traded quite a number of figures and I got some DC, he got some other stuff that he wanted. So I'll just show you some of the things I got in this trade in this particular video. So let's get the ball rolling with the first one. This one here, mind you, they're all, like I said, they're all DC characters, just different ones. This one here, the first one is Speedy, the sidekick of Green Arrow. And this figure is from the DC Direct, which most of you are maybe not familiar with, or some of you are not familiar with, but it's the same company as DC Collectibles. DC Direct is their old name, DC Collectibles is their new name that they're known these days, since 2012 onwards. So he came with a bow and one particular arrow that can be used to sort of mimic his power. So here we go. This is the bow. Has a string attached to it so that you can mimic him firing the arrow at the bad guys. And at the back he has a molded quiver with a whole bunch of molded in arrows except for one that can be pulled out, and it's a trick arrow of a sort. So this is sort of a modern version of Speedy, the sidekick of Green Arrow, and he's still wearing his red colors just like he would in his vintage days. So that would be Speedy, the first one. Let's see what else we got here. Alright, we have Professor Zoom, or the Evil Flash, is the next one. And here he is. Now this figure is not from DC Direct, this is from DC Universe Classics, made by Mattel. The same guys who made the Masters of the Universe Classics. He has a numerous articulation all over him, just like the Masters of the Universe, or like Marvel Legends for that matter. He can do a split, and he has articulation in the knees, in the ankles, and the arms can go up and down, they can go sideways 360 degrees. He also has articulation at the wrist and at the elbows and at the biceps, and also articulation in the waist so he can turn, and in the upper torso as well, so he can do an ab crunch a little bit backwards and forwards. And there is articulation in the head, meaning the neck. And that would be it. I don't think that these figures are like the Masters of the Universe Classics in the sense that they cannot have their heads removed, or even if they could, probably not all of them can. So he looks pretty neat because he comes in a bright yellow color, and as I said, he's quite articulated, and he's been known as one of the most notorious enemies of Flash because he has pretty much the exact same powers as Flash. And for those of you who watch the Flash TV series, he's also familiar from season 1, because he's been predominantly a villain in that season, and then of course he became one of the leading villains in the DC Legends of Tomorrow in season 2, where he joined with certain other members to give trouble to the DC Legends of Tomorrow. So yes, he's a speedster, but on the bad side. So that would be Professor Zoom. Let's move on to the next. Let's see what else we got here. Alright. Now this character, I don't know a whole lot about him. I do know that he's from DC. That's all I know, and I know he's a good guy. So some of you guys can maybe fill me on it in case you know more. This fellow is called Black Lightning. And I believe that this is probably his modern appearance and the modern costume. I do recall his figure from the Total Justice toy line from the mid-1990s that was either made by Kenner or by Hasbro, who took over from Kenner, and they were about 5-inch figures. And back then, his costume was almost exactly the same, with only one major difference: he wasn't bald. He had actually old-fashioned hair, like he had the same kind of hairstyle like the vintage Marvel Legends Luke Cage, sort of like a crew cut. Anyway, this should be the new version of Black Lightning, again from DC Direct this time. And yeah, he has typical articulation for DC Direct. It's not even remotely the same like Marvel Legends, but it's still good enough for the purpose of displaying it. He can move his legs forward and backward. He has knee articulation and no articulation whatsoever in the feet or the ankles. No articulation, no up crunch, no articulation in the waistline. The head can move left to right and a little bit up and down. And then, of course, the arms can move a bit sideways, up to this much. And then he has articulation in the elbows and a bit in the area just close to the elbow, so that means he can turn the arm 360 degrees, but there is no articulation in the wrists. So that would be Black Lightning. And as I said, if any of you guys know more about him, all I know is that he belongs to the Justice League. He's a member there. So that would be Black Lightning. Who else? Let's see what the magic bag has here. Alright, who is this? Now we have Power Girl. There she is. This is practically a Supergirl when she matured and she grew up into a woman and so forth, and her costume changed quite a bit, as you can tell. I suppose for her to differentiate herself from Superman. So there is no letter S anywhere in sight, but she does still have a red cape. And this figure comes from the DC Direct Crisis of Infinite Earths, Wave 2, I believe. And she's wearing her classic costume. And she has, again, the limited type of articulation that's expected in DC Direct figures from that time period. There is mostly articulation in the elbows and in the knees, and the legs can somewhat move a bit forward and backward, and the head can, well, in this case the head can move only just a tiny bit to the left and right. It's more static actually, and that's about it. That's as far as she goes. Now the next one, whichever one that may be, and we'll soon find out. Okay, now this character, if I'm not mistaken, again it's DC Direct, definitely, and from the Justice League. And this fellow is supposed to be the Vibe, the fellow who has powers of causing the vibes and tremors in the ground. Now the thing is, this is the classic version of him, how he looked back in the 70s, I believe. And this fellow, if I'm not mistaken, should be the same character like the one in the Flash TV series, where Vibe is one of the close friends of Barry Allen, meaning Cisco. So I believe it's the same character, or if not, they're just sharing the same common superhero identity. So this is the original Vibe, if I remember correctly, or this should be the Vibe. Now, if I made a mistake, then maybe this wouldn't be the Vibe, but the Black Lightning, meaning this fellow, just a classic version of him. Now, you guys can correct me, because I really think that this would be a character called Vibe, but on the other hand, it could be just, as I said, a classic version of Black Lightning. So it could be either or, I'm not really sure now. I know that this one on the right is modern version of Black Lightning. So anyway, he has a pretty decent articulation, and it's still lacking to do a split in the legs, which he cannot do, but he does have a sort of a minor ab crunch, and he can turn in the waist and in the head as well. The arms can go a little bit to the side, He has articulation in the wrists and in the elbows and just above the wrists right here. And he can move his legs forward but not backward. He can bend at the knee, and absolutely no articulation in the feet. So that's Vibe or Black Lightning. I'm just not 100% sure which one it is between the two, but I'm sure it's one of them. So that's that. Let's see. Whom else do we have here? Okay. This is one of the characters I've been waiting a long time to see. And I must admit she looks good just at the first glance like this. And that would be the Queen Mera, or the wife of Aquaman. So here she is in all her glory. And this figure is from DC Direct again. She's wearing her traditional royal clothes and the tiara or the crown. And she comes with a trident that looks a lot like Aquaman's, just slightly different shape. And of course she can carry that trident in one of her hands. This one right here. Now the articulation is what's to be expected as usual. She can only move pretty much in the arms and legs, and no articulation in the hips whatsoever. She can only move the legs forward a little bit. Actually, I may be wrong about that. She's actually not able to move legs much at all. But she can move them in the knees and her arms in the elbows, and move the arms a bit sideways, and that's about it. Now, the head cannot move left to right due to the fact that she has very hard plastic sculpted hair at the back here, so that's impeding any movement whatsoever. So she's not unable to do that due to the positioning of the hair. I'll just try and see if she can hold the trident in the other hand, which she actually can. So she's able to hold it in either of her hands. Now you will need a stand for her, which I believe I have in here somewhere, for her to stand, because otherwise she cannot stand much on her own. But other than that, she looks fine, I think. There is another version of her that came also from DC Direct after this particular figure, where she's wearing completely red outfit because she joined the Red Lanterns, and therefore belonging to the Rage group of lanterns, because red stands for rage when it comes to the Red Lanterns. Their power is derived from rage. So that would be Mera. And then another one here we got is another lady hero from DC Direct, and that would be Fire. Her name is Fire, and just a moment, she has something stuck at the back of her. Okay, I'm not sure what's that all about. She comes with a stand, a plastic stand that says Justice League International, so pretty much members of Justice League from around the world. And her power is fire. She appeared in the Justice League cartoon series, and this is her comic book looks, because in the cartoon she looks just a little bit different in order to match the animation. So there she is, and let's see how she fits on the stand here. There we go. So there she is. She can stand rather well, and I would recommend that she's always put on this stand, because otherwise she has a bit of a problem standing on her own. So there she is, Fire from Justice League International. She usually comes with another girl called Ice. So both of them appear as the members of the Justice League in the Justice League cartoon series. And in Batman Brave and the Bold they also have an appearance. So that would be her. And then, whom else? Oh, good. I pulled the one that goes along with her. Excellent. Saves me the trouble of looking. We have here her friend in Justice League, and that's Ice, the girl who controls Ice, and she's also a member of the Justice League. And just like Fire, she also showed up in the Justice League cartoon and in the Batman Brave and the Bold episodes. And she has a power to use ice to fight the bad guys. She also comes with a see-through stand called the Justice League, that says Justice League International on it. So all we have to really do is plant her onto the stand and she'll be fine. There we go. So let's put them side by side. There they are. I'll just try and get them a little bit closer. There we go. So that's how the two of them look like, side by side. I would say that the Fire, the green one on the right, is actually much taller in appearance, and the Ice is just a bit shorter. Now, if I remember correctly, both of these characters were also shown in the fight against Doomsday, in the comic book where Superman fights Doomsday and they both die at the end of it. These two were the members, part of the group of the heroes who tried to stall or even stop Doomsday, and they failed in it because he managed to tear them apart pretty much. He didn't kill them, but he did beat them pretty badly. I do recall Ice being there, and I think Fire was with her as well, trying to stop the behemoth that's Doomsday. So anyway, that's the story of these two. Let's see what else we got. Alright, now we have one of the old members of the Justice League, or at least I consider him an old member. And he is supposed to be a cyborg. And if I'm not mistaken, he is definitely from DC Direct, and that would be Red Tornado. Red Tornado is a cyborg of a sort, and he dates back to the old days of the Justice League, and of course he had numerous appearances such as Batman Brave and the Bold and the Justice League cartoon series. And this particular version of him is showing him in his classic costume, but this figure is based on the art of Alex Ross, a very famous comic book artist who is still quite active in the comic book industry. Alex Ross has done a lot of work, especially on Marvel and DC heroes, and his art is unique due to the fact that he's trying to present the good guys and the bad guys, how would they all look in real life. So that's what makes his art rather unique, and the approach of how he paints them. So I admire his work quite a bit. I have a few figures, including this one, based on his work, and I think he looks great, just like he stepped out of the comic book pages. And he comes with a rubber cape that's already molded onto him. He has, like most Alex Ross figures, he has limited articulation because he's mostly moving in the arms and legs, elbows, nothing in the waistline, no ab crunch, no movement in the wrists, and he can move above the ankles by moving his boots left to right, and he can also move his legs a little bit forward and a little bit backward, and that's about it. They're mostly a little bit static in appearance, I would say, but other than that, he looks pretty decent, and he looks exactly like he would in the comic books. So that's Red Tornado, who has the power to spin and create mini tornadoes with which he could knock out the bad guys. Now there is a character that's very similar to him, and that's a character called Cyclone, which has pretty much the same powers, except he's a heroic warrior from the Masters of the Universe, who can also create wind powers and to knock out his enemies. So that's Red Tornado for you. quite an interesting character altogether. Now, let's see what else we may have here. Alright. Now we have a member of the Justice Society of America, but also a member of Justice League as well. And she had an appearance in the Justice League cartoon series, where she's in a constant argument with Supergirl, of whom she's quite jealous altogether, because Supergirl is more famous than her in the show, and it's quite a bit of jealousy going between them. So this is Stargirl. Her father is called Stripe, and he is wearing a heavy-duty armor that's pretty much reminiscent of that of Iron Man. And together with her father, she's a member of the Justice League, and of course, she's also a member of the Justice Society of America, which was an organization of heroes before the creation of Justice League. And she can be displayed on this little round plastic stand. And she is from DC Direct line. So there she is. She comes with her weapon, the glowing stick, or whatever you want to call it, that she uses as a conduit to release her powers and to blast the enemies with it. And her outfit pretty much resembles somewhat that of the Captain America, because she's wearing a suit that's resembling an American flag, and it has stars on the side. And the colors of her outfit match the colors of the United States flag. So there is stars, there is red and white and blue and all that sort of thing. And then she's wearing black boots. So yes, this is one of the old members, but also can be applicable to Justice League as well. So that's that one. Let's see if there's anything else here that would be interesting. Trying to dig something out. Okay, here we go. This fellow is also the member of Justice League, or specifically the Justice League International, and it's Blue Beetle. Here we go. Now, Blue Beetle has definitely been portrayed in the comic book about Doomsday versus Superman, and he was one of the heroes there before Superman arrived, who tried to stop Doomsday from rampaging through the cities, and he failed in it, and he was badly beaten, physically beaten almost to death by Doomsday. And of course, there is more than one version of Blue Beetle. The most classic one is the one that was seen in the comic book, and this is also the classic version. But of course, there is at least one more modern version, and a different person who's wearing the mantle of Blue Beetle in the Batman Brave and the Bold. A young man who assumed the appearance of Blue Beetle, but wearing a more updated costume and more technological than this one. Now, Blue Beetle here comes also with a stand, which is this one right here, that says Justice League International on it. And he's only lacking his little laser gun, handgun, that he usually carries with him. But he was also released, and this one is from DC Direct, by the way, but he was also released in the Mattel Justice League, DC Universe Classics line as well. And in that version, he's also portrayed in his classic colors, meaning these right here. So, in the Batman Brave and the Bold, you get to see both versions of Blue Beetle, at least in one particular episode. You get to see the classic Blue Beetle, which is this one right here, and you get to see, in numerous episodes, you get to see the new Blue Beetle, who was wearing more of a technological suit with greater powers. So that would be the Blue Beetle. And let's see what else we may have here. And yes, we have one Superman figure right here. Classic Superman. And here he is. There we go. Now this Superman is from the same line as the Black Lightning, so he's just shown in his typical classic colors and the classic costume, and he, unlike some of the modern versions of Superman, this one does have the yellow S on his cape, and he is made by DC Direct back in the day, and he's very well portraying the Superman as we all know him. The art is, of course, based on some of the Justice League series comics issues from around 2000 plus year. I cannot recall exact year, but it does belong to the DC Direct days. The articulation is what's to be expected again, because DC Direct always had a limited articulation, but they were more focusing on the sculpt than the articulation. So he can move in the knees and in the elbows, and of course he can move at the head too. There is no up crunch, and there is no doing the split in his hips, no movement in the waistline. There is a movement in the arms, so he can move his arms a bit sideways, and at the elbows and at the wrist as well. So this is a rather good representation of the character. And with this figure, we also got, or at least I believe this belongs to him, or even if it doesn't, it still matches him rather well, is this Superman stand that's shaped like Superman's logo. So we can just see. I hope he fits fine, because I don't think this is supposed to be for this particular version of Superman, but then again, I think he will fit just fine, as you can tell. So I think he looks alright, and he fits rather well, so there is no trouble in balancing him on it. And this stand looks quite nice altogether. So that would be that, the classic version of Superman. And with this particular figure, I'll just have to, for the moment, bring this discussion to a close. I will show you some more figures in my next video. So until then, take care and see you guys next time. Bye.